The morning fog hung thick over Montecito as Prince Harry received the call that would change everything. His phone buzzed insistently on the marble kitchen counter while Meghan prepared breakfast for their children. The caller ID showed a number he recognized immediately, his private secretary's emergency line. "Your Royal Highness?" came the urgent voice. "You need to return to London immediately. The palace has issued a formal withdrawal order regarding your royal status. This is unprecedented." Harry's face went pale as he stepped away from the kitchen, his hand trembling slightly as he gripped the phone. "What kind of withdrawal order? What's happened?" "Sir, I cannot discuss details over the phone. But there's been a development involving the Duchess. Something she's disclosed has prompted immediate action from His Majesty. You have 48 hours to respond in person." The line went dead, leaving Harry staring at his phone in disbelief. 20 years of royal protocol training told him this wasn't a casual summons. The palace only issued formal withdrawal orders in matters of extreme gravity situations that threatened the very foundation of the monarchy. Meghan appeared in the doorway, her expression shifting from casual concern to alarm as she saw Harry's face. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "We need to talk," Harry said quietly, gesturing toward their private study. As they walked through their California mansion, a home they'd built as their sanctuary from royal pressures, Harry's mind raced through possibilities. What could Meghan have said or done to trigger such drastic action? In the study, surrounded by family photos and mementos of their independent life, Harry turned to face his wife. "The palace has issued a withdrawal order. They want me in London within 48 hours. My secretary mentioned something you've disclosed." Meghan's reaction was immediate and telling. Her confident demeanor cracked, replaced by something Harry had rarely seen from her: genuine fear. She sank into the leather armchair, her hands covering her face. "Meghan, what did you tell them?" Harry's voice carried a mixture of confusion and growing dread. "I thought I was protecting us," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The documentary crew. They asked about the children's security arrangements, about the real reasons we left. I thought if people knew the truth about what really happened during those final months in London, they'd understand why we had to leave." Harry felt his stomach drop. "What truth? What exactly did you say?" Meghan looked up, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "About the meetings. The ones you weren't told about. The decisions that were made about our future without consulting us. About what your father and William discussed regarding our roles. Those conversations were private, Meghan. Even I don't know everything that was said in those meetings." "But I do," she said softly. "I recorded some of them." The room fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock, a wedding gift from the Queen. Harry stared at his wife, trying to process what she'd just revealed. Recording private royal conversations wasn't just a breach of protocol. It was potentially treasonous. "You recorded conversations in the palace?" Harry's voice was hollow with shock. "Not intentionally at first. My phone was recording when I thought it was off. But when I realized what I had captured, the things they said about us, about our children's future, about whether you were fit to remain in the line of succession, I kept them." Harry began pacing, his hands running through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood that emerged in moments of extreme stress. "And you gave these recordings to a documentary crew?" "Meghan, do you understand what you've done?" "I gave them transcripts, not the actual recordings. I thought people deserved to know how we were really treated. How they discussed removing you from royal duties permanently. How they questioned your mental stability. After your mother's death anniversary reactions." The weight of the situation began to crush down on Harry. His wife had essentially declared war on his family, using their most private moments as ammunition. The withdrawal order wasn't just about his royal status. It was about whether he could ever return home again. "The documentary airs next week," Meghan continued, her voice strengthening with defiance. "People will finally understand why we had to leave. They'll see that we didn't abandon our duties. We were pushed out." Harry stopped pacing and looked directly at her. You've just given them grounds to strip me of everything, Meghan. Not just titles, everything. My patronages, my military honors, my connection to the charities I've worked with for decades. But they can't deny the truth of what happened. The truth? Harry's voice rose for the first time. The truth is that royal business stays within royal walls. That's not just tradition, it's survival. You've broken the one rule that keeps the monarchy functioning. As the full implications began to settle over both of them, Harry realized his 48-hour deadline wasn't just about responding to palace demands. It was about choosing between the life he'd built with Meghan and any hope of maintaining ties to his homeland and heritage outside their window. The California sun was rising, but Harry felt only the approaching darkness of an impossible decision that would define the rest of his life. The private jet's engines hummed steadily as Harry stared out at the Atlantic Ocean below. 12 hours into the flight to London, he still couldn't fully process the conversation he'd had with Meghan before leaving. She had remained in California with their children, claiming the documentary's release required her presence for damage control. But Harry suspected she was afraid to face the consequences of her actions on British soil. His phone contained 17 missed calls from his father's office and 12 from William's private number. Each voicemail grew progressively more urgent, but Harry couldn't bring himself to listen to them yet. Instead, he found himself reading and rereading the formal withdrawal order that had been hand-delivered to his Montecito home just hours before his departure. The document was written in the ancient legal language of royal decrees, but its meaning was crystal clear. Prince Harry was being summoned to answer for grave breaches of royal confidentiality that threatened the constitutional stability of the monarchy. The phrase that haunted him most was buried in the middle paragraph. Actions of the Duke's spouse that may constitute treasonous disclosure of privileged royal communications. Treason. The word felt medieval, yet here it was, typed on official palace letterhead in the 21st century. Harry's protection officer, sitting discreetly across the aisle, approached with a secure tablet. Sir, urgent communication from Buckingham Palace. They're requesting your immediate availability upon landing. The message was from his father's principal private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, whom Harry had known since childhood. The tone was formal but carried an undercurrent of personal concern. Harry, the situation is more serious than you may realize. The Attorney General has been consulted. Your father wishes to speak with you before any official proceedings begin. Please call upon landing. The Attorney General's involvement meant the government was now considering whether Meghan's actions constituted a crime against the state. Harry had seen enough constitutional law during his royal training to understand the implications. If the recordings contained discussions about succession, national security, or royal prerogatives, Meghan could face charges that would make their exile permanent. As the plane began its descent into London, Harry's mind drifted to the last time he'd made this journey. It had been for his grandfather's funeral, a solemn occasion where family unity had briefly overshadowed their conflicts. Now he was returning as what felt like an enemy of the institution he'd been born to serve. The familiar landmarks of London appeared through the airplane window, the Thames snaking through the city, the historic buildings he'd grown up visiting, the places where his mother had once walked. Everything looked the same. Yet Harry felt like a stranger approaching a foreign land. Upon landing at a private airfield, Harry was immediately escorted to an unmarked vehicle. Instead of heading toward Buckingham Palace or his usual London residence, the car took an unexpected route toward Windsor Castle. The significance wasn't lost on him. Windsor was where the most serious royal business was conducted. Away from the prying eyes of London media during the hour-long drive, Harry's phone finally rang with a call he couldn't ignore. William's name appeared on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, Harry answered. Harry. William's voice was strained, lacking any warmth. Are you aware of what's in these transcripts? I've seen some excerpts online, but Meghan won't show me everything she recorded. Jesus, Harry. It was rare to hear William swear, which immediately told Harry how serious the situation had become. She recorded our conversation about your children's security arrangements. The one where we discussed potential threats and response protocols. That information is classified at the highest levels. Harry felt his blood run cold. Royal children's security details were among the most closely guarded secrets in Britain. Revealing such information could put not only his own children at risk, but compromise security for all royal family members. There's more, William continued. She recorded Father discussing your inheritance arrangements and the provisions he was considering for your future. Information that could affect constitutional succession if made public. William, I swear I didn't know about any of this until yesterday. I want to believe that. But you're married to her, Harry. How could you not know she was recording private family conversations? The question hung between them like an accusation. Harry realized that his ignorance of Meghan's actions didn't absolve him in his family's eyes. It made him appear either complicit or dangerously naive. The documentary airs in 3 days, William said. Father has been in emergency sessions with the Privy Council all night. They're discussing options that ... William's voice trailed off. What options? Options that would make it impossible for you to ever return to royal duties. Harry, they're talking about formal exile. Not just stepping back from duties, complete severing of all ties to the crown. As the car approached Windsor Castle, Harry could see the ancient walls where English monarchs had made decisions that shaped history for centuries. He was about to walk into those same halls to face a decision that would determine whether he remained a British prince or became something else entirely. I'm at Windsor now, Harry said quietly. Father's waiting for you in the Oak Room, Harry ... Whatever Meghan told you about why you left, whatever justification she gave for making these recordings, it doesn't matter now. The only thing that matters is whether you're going to stand with your family or with her. The call ended just as the car passed through the castle gates. Harry realized that William had just presented him with an ultimatum that would define not only his future but the future of his children. In a few minutes, he would have to choose between his loyalty to his wife and his birthright as a member of the British royal family. The Oak Room at Windsor Castle had witnessed centuries of royal decisions, from declarations of war to abdications of kings. As Harry walked through its heavy wooden doors, he found King Charles seated behind an ornate desk, looking older than Harry had ever seen him. The weight of the crown, both literally and figuratively, seemed to have aged his father years in the months since their last meeting. Sit down. Harry, Charles said without looking up from the documents spread before him. His voice carried the formal tone reserved for the most serious royal business. Harry took the chair across from his father, noting the presence of Sir Clive Alderton in the corner and, more ominously, a woman he recognized as the Attorney General's chief counsel. This wasn't going to be a father-son conversation, it was an official royal tribunal. Charles finally raised his eyes to meet Harry's. Do you understand why you've been summoned? I understand that Meghan recorded some private conversations and shared transcripts with a documentary crew. But I need to know exactly what she recorded, Charles interrupted. Our state secrets. Conversations about national security, royal finances, and constitutional matters that could destabilize the monarchy if made public. Sir Clive stepped forward, placing a thick folder on the desk. These are the complete transcripts we've obtained from the production company. Your wife recorded over 40 hours of private royal conversations during your final 6 months of active duty. Harry's hands trembled as he opened the folder. The first page contained a conversation between Charles and William about Harry's mental health following his military service. The words on the page made Harry's stomach turn, not because they were cruel, but because they showed genuine concern for his well-being discussed in clinical, political terms. She recorded a conversation where you and William discussed whether I was fit for royal duties? Harry asked, looking at his father. We were concerned about you, Harry, your behavior after leaving the army, your struggles with public appearances, the incidents with photographers. We were trying to find ways to support you while protecting the institution. Harry flipped through more pages, each revelation worse than the last. Meghan had recorded discussions about their children's future titles, conversations about Harry's inheritance, and most damaging of all, A meeting where palace security officials discussed specific threats against the royal family and their response protocols? The security briefing, Harry said, his voice barely a whisper. She recorded information about terrorist threats? The counsel from the Attorney General's office spoke for the first time. Your wife recorded classified information that, if released, could compromise ongoing security operations and put lives at risk. Under the Official Secrets Act, this constitutes a serious crime. Harry looked up from the documents, his world crumbling around him. She told me she was protecting our family. That people deserve to know why we left. Harry, Charles said, leaning forward, your wife didn't just record conversations about your departure. She began recording shortly after your wedding. She systematically documented private royal business for over 2 years. The implication hit Harry like a physical blow. Meghan hadn't just made impulsive recordings during their difficult final months. She had apparently been gathering intelligence from the beginning of their marriage. Every family dinner, every private meeting, every moment of trust had potentially been weaponized. Why? Harry asked, though he wasn't sure if he was addressing his father or speaking to himself. Sir Clive consulted his notes. According to her representatives, she claims she needed evidence of the family's treatment of her to justify your departure. She says the recordings prove you were both subjected to institutional racism and deliberate exclusion. But the security information, the constitutional discussions, how does that relate to her treatment? Charles stood and walked to the ancient window overlooking Windsor's grounds. It doesn't, Harry, which is why we believe this was always about leverage. Your wife collected information that could damage the monarchy and held it as insurance. Insurance against what? Against losing you, Charles said quietly. If you ever considered returning to royal duties without her, if you ever chose duty over marriage, she would have the means to destroy everything you were returning to. Harry felt physically sick as the pieces fell into place. Meghan's constant references to their need to protect themselves, her insistence on controlling their narrative, her anger whenever Harry showed any nostalgia. For his royal life it all made sense if she had been building a case against his family from the beginning. The documentary airs tomorrow, the Attorney General's counsel said. We have legal grounds to seek an injunction, but the production company is American, and the recordings were made by an American citizen. Our options are limited. Charles returned to his desk. Harry, I need to ask you directly. Did you know your wife was making these recordings? No, I swear to you, I had no idea until yesterday. Did you provide her with information that she used in these recordings? Harry thought carefully before answering. I shared things about our family that any husband would share with his wife. Private conversations, family concerns, my feelings about decisions that were being made. You never thought she would use them against us. Charles finished. The room fell silent as the magnitude of the betrayal settled over everyone present. Harry realized that his marriage had been, at least partially, an intelligence-gathering operation against the British royal family. What happens now? Harry asked. Sir Clive opened another folder. The Privy Council has prepared 3 options for your consideration. First, you can publicly denounce your wife's actions, seek divorce proceedings, and request restoration to full royal duties. Harry's immediate reaction was visceral rejection. Whatever Meghan had done, she was still the mother of his children. Second, Sir Clive continued, you can accept permanent exile from royal duties while retaining your title. You would never be allowed to represent the crown again, but you would remain a prince in name only. And the third option? Charles answered this time, his voice heavy with regret. Complete removal from the line of succession and loss of all royal titles and privileges. You would become a private citizen, and your children would have no claim to royal status. Harry stared at his father, understanding that these weren't just administrative choices, they were the destruction of his identity. He had been Prince Harry for 39 years. He didn't know how to be anyone else. How long do I have to decide? The documentary airs tomorrow evening, Charles said. Once those recordings become public, the damage to the monarchy will be done. We need your answer by tomorrow morning. As Harry left Windsor Castle that evening, He realized he was facing the same choice that had confronted royals throughout history: duty to the crown or personal loyalty. But unlike his ancestors who had abdicated for love, Harry was being asked to choose between his family and a wife who had betrayed them all. Harry spent the night in a guest room at Windsor Castle, but sleep proved impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw fragments of the transcripts he'd read. Conversations where his family had tried to help him while Meghan secretly recorded their efforts. By dawn, he had made several decisions, none of them easy. His first call was to California. Meghan answered on the second ring, her voice bright with artificial cheer that immediately irritated him. "Harry, how did the meeting go? Have you straightened everything out?" "Meghan, I need you to stop the documentary." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds before she responded. "What do you mean, stop it?" "Call the production company. Tell them you've changed your mind. Withdraw permission to use the transcripts. Whatever it takes." "Harry, we can't do that. People need to hear our truth. They need to understand what your family put us through." Harry walked to the window, looking out at the same view that had comforted him as a child during difficult times. "Our truth?" "Meghan, you recorded classified security information. Information that could get people killed if it becomes public. Those conversations showed how they discriminated against us, how they showed my family trying to protect me." Harry's voice rose for the first time since arriving in England. "You recorded my father discussing my mental health struggles with William because they were worried about me. You turned their concern into evidence of conspiracy." Another long silence. When Meghan spoke again, her voice had changed, becoming cooler and more calculating. "Harry, if you're calling to ask me to sacrifice everything we've built here to protect people who never protected us, then we need to talk about what's really important. What's really important is that you stop this documentary before it destroys any chance I have of ever going home again." "Home?" Meghan's voice turned sharp. "California is your home now. I'm your home. Our children are your home. That place, those people, they never wanted you to be happy. They wanted you to be useful." Harry realized they were having two completely different conversations. Meghan saw the recordings as justified revenge against people who had wronged them. Harry now saw them as a betrayal of people who had been trying, however imperfectly, to help him. "Meghan, please. Just this once. Trust me when I tell you this will destroy everything. It will destroy their ability to control us, yes." "Harry, you sound like you're forgetting why we left." "I'm remembering why I stayed away so long," Harry replied quietly, and ended the call. His next conversation was with his children's protection team in California. If Meghan wouldn't stop the documentary, he needed to ensure his son and daughter were safe from any backlash. The head of their security detail confirmed what Harry already suspected: the recordings contained enough operational detail to compromise their safety protocols. By mid-morning, Harry found himself in an even more difficult phone call with his son Archie, who was old enough to sense that something was wrong. The boy's innocent questions about when Daddy was coming home cut deeper than any royal decree could. "Will you be back for my football game on Saturday?" Archie asked. Harry stared at his reflection in the castle's ancient mirrors, seeing a man caught between two worlds with no clear path forward. "I don't know yet, buddy. Daddy has some important things to figure out." "Is it because of Mummy's movie?" The question hit Harry like a physical blow. If a 7-year-old understood that Meghan's documentary was causing problems, how had Harry himself been so blind to what she was planning? At noon, Harry met with William in the castle's private chapel, a neutral space where they had often talked as children when their relationship was simple brotherhood rather than complicated by royal protocol. "Have you made your decision?" William asked without preamble. "I've asked Meghan to stop the documentary." "She refused." William nodded grimly. "We expected that. The production company has already started promotional campaigns. They're calling it The Prince's Truth: Hidden Conversations from Inside the Royal Family." "William, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. In all those conversations Meghan recorded, were you and Father really trying to help me, or were you trying to manage a problem?" William was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. Both, probably. Harry, you were struggling. The whole family could see it. Yes, we were concerned about how your struggles affected the institution, but we were also genuinely worried about you as a person. And Meghan? We tried to help her too at first. But it became clear that every gesture of support, every attempt at inclusion, was being catalogued as evidence against us. It was like living with someone who was building a legal case. Harry realized that his family had been walking on eggshells around Meghan not out of prejudice, but out of awareness that anything they said could be used against them. The isolation Meghan had complained about might have been self-protection on their part. The documentary airs in 6 hours, William continued. After that, there's no going back. Whatever you decide about your future, it has to be decided now. Harry spent the afternoon alone in the castle's library, surrounded by histories of royal families who had faced impossible choices. He read about Edward VIII, who had abdicated for love but spent the rest of his life regretting the loss of purpose that came with losing his royal role. He studied the costs paid by family members who had chosen loyalty to spouses over duty to the crown, but Harry also thought about the costs of choosing duty over family. His children would grow up knowing their father had chosen royal protocol over their mother. They would inherit not just his royal bloodline, but the knowledge that it had come at the price of their family unity. As evening approached, Harry made his decision. But it wasn't one of the 3 options the Privy Council had presented. Instead, he called for a meeting with his father and formally requested permission to address the nation directly before the documentary aired. "I want to speak to the British people," Harry told Charles. "Not as a prince making excuses, but as a man taking responsibility for his choices and their consequences." Charles studied his son's face, perhaps seeing something there he hadn't expected. "What will you say?" "The truth." "My truth." Not Meghan's version, not the palace's version, but what really happened and what it means for my future. For the first time since Harry had arrived at Windsor, his father smiled slightly. "That might be the most royal thing you've said in years." As Harry prepared for what might be his final act as a working member of the royal family, he realized that sometimes the most important choice isn't between available options, but in refusing to accept that those are the only choices possible. The television studios at Broadcasting House felt different at 7 in the evening than Harry remembered from his previous royal appearances. Gone was the usual elaborate setup with multiple camera angles and palace-approved lighting. Instead, a single camera faced a simple chair in a sparse room, creating an intimate setting that felt more like a confession than a royal address. Harry had insisted on going live. Despite the palace's preference for a pre-recorded statement they could review, he needed the British people to see him speaking in real time, without editing or polish. As the documentary began airing simultaneously on American networks, Sir Clive had tried one final time to dissuade him. "Your Royal Highness, once you begin speaking publicly about private family matters, there's no containing the consequences. The monarchy has survived for centuries by maintaining dignified silence. The monarchy has also nearly collapsed several times by refusing to acknowledge reality," Harry had replied. "Tonight, reality is that my wife recorded private conversations with my family and is broadcasting them to the world. Dignified silence won't survive that." Now, as the red recording light illuminated, Harry faced the camera with no script, no teleprompter, and no safety net. For the first time in his adult life, he would speak entirely as himself, rather than as a representative of an institution. "Good evening. I'm speaking to you tonight not as the Duke of Sussex, but as Harry Wales, a British citizen who has made serious mistakes and must now face their consequences." The use of his childhood surname instead of his royal title sent immediate shockwaves through social media. Palace officials watching from Buckingham Palace realized Harry wasn't just giving a statement. He was potentially renouncing his royal identity in real time. Many of you are watching or will watch a documentary tonight that contains private conversations involving my family. These recordings were made without the knowledge or consent of the other participants. I want to be absolutely clear. I did not know these recordings existed until 2 days ago. Harry paused, collecting himself for the most difficult part of his statement. However, my ignorance of the recordings doesn't absolve me of responsibility for their existence. I shared private family information with my wife that she then recorded. I failed to protect my family's privacy, and I failed to recognize that someone I loved was treating our marriage as an intelligence-gathering operation. In California, Meghan watched the broadcast from their Montecito home, her face growing pale as Harry continued. This wasn't the supportive husband she had expected. This was someone she no longer recognized. The conversations you may hear tonight were recorded during a period when my family was trying to help me through personal struggles. They show private discussions about my mental health, my children's security, and constitutional matters that should never become public. They were recorded by someone who turned my family's concern into evidence of conspiracy. Harry's voice strengthened as he continued. I want to address directly the claim that these recordings expose institutional racism or deliberate cruelty toward my wife. What they actually expose is a family trying to navigate an impossible situation, with someone who was documenting our every interaction for potential future use. The palace had prepared for Harry to distance himself from Meghan's actions while defending their marriage. They hadn't prepared for him to directly contradict her narrative about their treatment. I have spent 4 years believing that my family had failed to support us, that they had driven us away through prejudice and indifference. But seeing these recordings in context has shown me something different. It has shown me that while my family was imperfect in their responses, they were genuine in their efforts to find solutions. Social media erupted as viewers realized Harry was fundamentally revising the story that had dominated royal coverage for years. The narrative of the wronged couple fleeing a racist institution was crumbling in real time. I owe my father, my brother, and other family members an apology that is long overdue. I allowed my marriage to become a weapon against people who loved me. I prioritized my wife's grievances over my duty to protect my family's privacy and dignity. In the palace, King Charles watched his son's statement with a mixture of relief and heartbreak. This wasn't the reunion he had hoped for, but it was an acknowledgement of truth that made reconciliation possible. Tonight, I am announcing several decisions. First, I am formally requesting that the production company remove all recordings that contain classified security information or constitutional discussions. If they refuse, I will support legal action to prevent their broadcast, even if that means testifying against my own wife. The legal implications of Harry's statement were enormous. He was offering to be a witness in any prosecution of Meghan under the Official Secrets Act. Second, I am requesting a formal separation of my role as father to my children from my relationship with their mother. My children deserve protection from the consequences of their mother's actions, and I will fight to ensure they can maintain relationships with both sides of their family. Harry was essentially announcing divorce proceedings in the most public way possible, but framing it as protection for his children rather than abandonment of his wife. Finally, I am requesting a meeting with His Majesty to discuss the possibility of returning to royal duties, not as the Duke of Sussex, but under whatever terms the Crown deems appropriate for someone seeking to rebuild trust after betraying it. This was the statement that changed everything. Harry wasn't just apologizing, he was asking to come home. I know that many of you feel I have dishonored my heritage and disappointed your expectations. You're right. But I also know that the British people have always believed in redemption through service. I'm asking for the chance to earn back your trust and to serve my country again, even if I can never fully repair the damage I have helped to cause. As Harry concluded his statement, viewers across Britain and around the world realized they had witnessed something unprecedented. A member of the royal family publicly acknowledging serious personal failure and requesting a path back to service. I end tonight by saying something I should have said years ago. I love my family, I love my country, and I am deeply sorry for the pain my actions have caused both. Thank you. The red light went dark, leaving Harry alone in the studio with the knowledge that he had just either destroyed his marriage to save his family relationships, or sacrificed both for the sake of public honesty. His phone immediately buzzed with a message from his father. "Come home. "Son, we'll figure out the rest together." For the first time in 4 years, Harry felt like a prince again. 6 months after Harry's televised confession, the landscape of his life had changed completely. The cottage at Kensington Palace, where he now lived, was modest compared to his former California mansion, but it felt more like home than anywhere he'd been in years. Through the window, he could see William's children playing in the palace gardens, a sight that still brought him both joy and regret. The documentary had aired as scheduled, but Harry's preemptive statement had fundamentally changed how the public received it. Instead of explosive revelations about royal racism, viewers saw recordings that revealed a family struggling to help someone who was secretly working against them. Public sympathy shifted dramatically, with Meghan facing intense criticism for betraying private conversations and potentially endangering royal security. The legal consequences had been swift. The Attorney General's office had successfully obtained injunctions, preventing the broadcast of recordings containing classified security information, but not before enough had aired to compromise several protection protocols. Meghan faced potential charges under the Official Secrets Act. Though her American residency complicated prosecution efforts, Harry's phone buzzed with his daily check-in message from his children in California. The custody arrangements had been painful to negotiate, but he now had his son and daughter with him for 2 months each summer and winter, with regular video calls throughout the year. It wasn't ideal, but it was more contact than he'd feared possible. "Papa, when can we come see the horses again?" his daughter asked through the video call. "Summer is only 6 weeks away, sweetheart. And Uncle William says you can help train the new polo ponies." The restoration of his relationship with William had been gradual but genuine. The brothers still had difficult conversations about the years of estrangement, but William's children had embraced their uncle's return with enthusiasm. That helped heal old wounds. King Charles had been true to his word about finding a path forward. Harry had been given a new role as royal patron for veterans' mental health, a position that utilized his military experience and personal struggles with trauma. It wasn't the full restoration of his former duties, but it was meaningful work that served people he cared about. The public response to his return had been cautiously positive. Polls showed that while many Britons remained disappointed in his past choices, they respected his willingness to acknowledge mistakes and work to make amends. His first official engagement, visiting a veterans support center in Manchester, had drawn crowds that were larger and more enthusiastic than anyone had expected. "Your Royal Highness," his private secretary entered the cottage's small study, "the Prime Minister's office has confirmed your appointment to the Commonwealth Veterans Council. The announcement will be made next week." "Harry, no.